Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Hassan Talks podcast. This episode is very, very, very important, and it's kind of heavy as well. So I hope you are having your coffee, your tea, whatever drink next to you, prepared and ready with your notes as well to write down all the points that will be pointed out today. Because today we're talking about the importance of mental health. And I believe we are living in a very tough times. We are living in a very complicated year as well. All of us usually go through problems. We go through dark thoughts and very mixed emotions. But this year it's been even more difficult for everybody. Nobody's excluded from this discussion. So I thought, as this podcast is always about talking about the uncomfortable topics sometimes that needs to be addressed. So today is a very good chance to talk about mental health. Of course, I'm no expert in this, so I decided to invite a very good friend of mine who's a psychotherapist based in Turkey, in Istanbul right now, but originally from Kashmir. And we've met like years ago, and now we had the chance now finally to talk again on this podcast. So I want to welcome Yaqeen Sikander. Hello, Yaqeen.
Hello, thank you very much. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here on your podcast and talking about mental health.
The pleasure is mine as well. So, Yaqeen, we all know that we need to take care of our bodies. And I think everybody is aware that if you don't eat well, you're going to get sick. Your stomach will start acting up. You cannot really carry yourself around. And these things are very visible and very easy to notice because it's the physical health. But what's really being ignored all the time by everybody, basically, is our mental health. And probably because we don't know the signs or we don't know we don't know the signs or the main signs of having a mental health problem until it's very, very late. So can you identify for us the main signs of having mental health issues?
Well, thank you very much for that really essential question about the signs of mental health. But before going into the signs of mental health conditions, talking about the importance of the mental health, the answer to that would be how important mental health is. The mind or the brain has autonomy over the whole body. So if the mind is healthy, if our thoughts are healthy, our feelings and our actions and our behavior would be likewise. But if there is something wrong with the thought processes, our behavior, our feelings, our thoughts would also be problematic. And that is one of the basic premises of the cognitive behavioral therapy, for example. Now, the importance of mental health, before I go to the signs of it, I can illustrate through an example. Back in the days when we were in Malaysia, I guess we graduated from the same university back in Kuala Lumpur. So we had to take, a part of the curriculum was to take a subject called as experimental psychology. And as a part of the experiment, what we did basically is we had an experimental and a control group. And we collected the data. The sample was the students of the university. We told them that you have to take these tablets for 3 weeks, and it increases the memory power. So what happened when we gave these pills to the students for 3 weeks, and they actually did better in their exams, and they came back and said, you know what, we need more of these pills and we need them for the subsequent semesters because we really did much better. Our GPA is much better than the last semester. What were those pills? Where did you get it from? And the answer to that is we were feeding them simple sugar. They were sugar pills. There was nothing extraordinary in them. So that is the placebo effect. Your mind lets you believe certain things, and once your mind believes in something, it starts happening, right? So that is how important believing or our mindset is. And our mind, because of the placebo effects, can believe in things, and we start seeing them as our reality. Which brings me to the idea of signs of mental health. Look, I'll give you a thumb's rule here, which is like a mental shortcut, a heuristic. How do we know the signs of the mental health illness? For example, one of the signs is sadness or irritability, which is prolonged, which doesn't go. Look, all of us feel sad, let's say after a breakup, after the loss of someone in our life, be it a human being, be it our pet.
It's a natural feeling.
Loss.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sense of loss. So it comes and it goes. What if it stays? right? So that is one of the signs. But the mental shortcut here is this. If your sadness, if your grief, if your sorrow, if your pain, if your irritability, if your thoughts, they are interfering in your daily life, and that has become a problem for you in your daily life, that is a huge red signal that you might need professional help. So this is where we draw the line. If it is interfering in your daily life, if it is affecting your functioning, if it has become an impairment. So if you have problems in waking up, if you have problems in sleeping on time, you have problems in eating, in the sleep-wake cycle as well. So these are some of the signs of mental health conditions. If you are social withdrawal, you are no longer interested in the activities or the people that you once used to meet, or the activities or the hobbies that you once used to indulge yourself into, they no longer seem pleasurable to you. You're excessively worried, you're sad, you're anxious all the time, or you have excessively high or low moods. So these are some of the key signs of mental health conditions. But to remember as a shortcut, it is that whatever you're going through, if it's affecting your daily life, if it's interfering in your daily life functioning, then that is when we know that, you know what, you might need to seek professional psychiatric or psychological help.
Okay, so I believe if the answer will be in short is if whatever you're going through interfering with your daily life. The thing is, like,
correct,
since we all go through ups and downs, and this is very natural cycle of life. The thing is, like, sometimes we notice these signs a little bit late, and usually the people around us either they don't care much, or they don't know us very well, or we don't communicate. Correct. All this kind of stuff. So I'm trying my best now to know how to detect all these red lights a little bit earlier, in early stages, to avoid, absolutely, you know, like suicidal thoughts or stuff like that.
Correct. So that's a very beautiful thing that you said. So we have to look for these signs in ourselves as well as other people we care for, people in our family, people who are our friends. So people, you know, especially first of all with family, we cannot talk these things. These issues have become a taboo that we don't open up. So people who suffer from mental health conditions, they have to suffer alone unnecessarily. You know, it prolongs their pain. And when it comes to friends as well, it's like, you know, they just take it so lightly. Yeah, whatever, it will just pass. You know, so that is the reason why people who have any mental health conditions, they are living them inside of themselves. They cannot express themselves properly because there is a very high risk and fear of losing people, as well as being misunderstood and being judged and being stigmatized and being traumatized. So these are the reason what makes people repress their mental health conditions. But the idea is to make it more mainstream, to talk about it more and more, until a point like where we talk about mental health just like we talk about physical health.
Yeah, I believe this is very, very important. So instead of labeling people with stress or anxiety as crazy, or you should go, I don't know, isolate yourself, don't talk with anybody else until you set your mind straight. This is a stage that we all go through. We just need to discuss it and be like very, talking about it very open. Now, I wanna ask you a very personal question here. Since you are a life coach, since you are a psychotherapist, but you are also a content creator, which means
yes,
you interact so much with social media.
I do.
You post content there, and I believe some people also like reach out to you through DMs to talk about the problems they're having, since you are an expert in that. Now, you notice that social media has become this kind of illusion, or this is a perfect life where everybody just present the perfect side of them, and which is to some extent it's understandable, since you have the option to what to post, what not to post. The problem is so many people are not blessed with these beautiful images, and then they constantly check what others are posting, and that leads them to a depression, I don't know, stress, or feel unloved, feel not beautiful enough. And how do you deal with that as a psychotherapist?
Well, a very significant as an essential question. That is actually a debate and a topic on its own. So me being a life coach and a therapist, and a lot of the people reach to me, as you said, through the DMs, and because I create content when it comes to mental health. And another reason for that is not everybody can afford therapy, because therapy can be quite pricey at times and it needs a lot of dedication. So that's why I try to create content and reach out to people creating this content, those who cannot afford therapy and need tips about their mental health, with general mental health conditions, about anxiety, depression, etc. I even do live sessions, put them online for this idea in my mind. I was born in 1991, so I'm 29 right now. And smartphones were introduced in 2007. And that's the year when I passed my high school. I was 16. And then in Kashmir, we have something called as higher secondary, which is O and A levels, 2 more years. And I remember I had my first smartphone, and I came to know what WhatsApp and stuff is, even though I was a bit late, in 2010, end of 2010, beginning of 2011, when I was in Malaysia. Why? Because everybody was making those smartphone groups and having applications like Dropbox. So I had to do it as a part of my bachelor's degree. So that was my introduction 10 years back to the social media. But nowadays, I work as a consultant psychologist in an international school, an American international school, and we have from kindergarten to the grade 12. Students in grade 2, grade 3, they know how to use an iPad, they have social media accounts, they have restricted access to everything which is out there. And that to me is a huge matter of concern, because there is a real life that we used to live. I remember my childhood. We used to have face-to-face social interactions. Now there is an option for youngsters especially. I'm not worried about people who are older, because based on research, based on the literature, the most vulnerable generation in this are the young adults and teenagers. And let me give you an example of this. An example would be from 2007 to 2015, we're talking about a frame of, let's say, like 8 years, even if we pull it from to a decade. 92% of the high schoolers were using smartphones by 2015. And depression, from 13%, it increased to 65% in these 8 years, from 13 to 65%. And suicide among the teenage girls also increased more than 60%, actually more than 65% to be precise, in these years. And some experts or some therapists and psychologists see this rise of depression as an evidence that the connection between the social media users are less emotionally satisfying, because it's a virtual life. Face-to-face interactions are more emotionally satisfying, but virtually you cannot be so much emotionally satisfied. And that's why teens and young adults end up socially being more isolated, because there is more of an online activity rather than something physical, emotional connection. It also leads to other problems when we talk about the social media and how it affects the young adults especially. It affects the sleep-wake pattern as well, because you have to look at the screen before you go to sleep, and it's the first thing that you look at when you wake up from sleep. That is a huge, major, true, that's a huge, major problem. And youngsters nowadays in the school, they're having concentration problems. They're having problem in focusing because of 2 reasons here. Why? First reason, we have become a generation which needs everything fast. The attention span of the people is decreasing, especially the youngsters, because now they can't focus in a lesson. We have to look for other alternatives now, which in the school we are trying to develop, which I do as a consultant psychotherapist. What do we do to increase the attention span of these youngsters? Why? Because before you used to have at least movies and long videos. Now you have everything explained in like 1 minute. They don't even want to, the stories on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, it's just 1 minute, and you want everything extremely fast. So that is causing concentration problems. Secondly, even when you give homework, which is an essential part of curriculum and also an essential part of therapy, is homework, that you go back and you do certain homeworks that a therapist gives you. But the problem here is this: while they're doing their homeworks, for example, they're always chatting with their friends, they're always on their phones. So that creates another focus and concentration problem. Now, talking about the girls, based on the literature, based on the research, girls have been much more negatively affected by the social media, and more than 50% suicides have increased because of the social media. There is a correlation between increased use of social media and teenage and young adult depression and suicide rates. Now, correlation doesn't tell us about causation. Is this the cause? Not sure. But is there a positive correlation between increased use of social media hours and depression and suicide? Exactly. Yes, there is among the teenagers and young adults. Why? Because of this ideal body image. You have to follow the Kardashians. You have to have a figure like this. You need to be, and they see other students from their class sharing stuff on their social media, and they want to be like that.
You want to be included,
and that
but
comparison,
they feel left out. Yeah.
Absolutely, that comparison, that peer pressure, that you have to be on this app or you have to be on the social media platform, that is where everything would be shared. And following up, there is this term called as FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And this fear of missing out is not only in the physical terms, it's also in the virtual terms. I don't want to miss out a single story or a single post of my friend, or of the party they want to attend, or how they spent their weekend, or what food they had, or what holiday destination that have chosen. So this has made us unnecessarily engaged in other people's lives so much that we have forgotten to focus on our own lives. And that's why we have authors who write books like Deep Work. It was one of the books that I recently read about deep work, that if you really want to do something serious, you want to do something significant, something substantial, disconnect yourself from the social media platform. These are huge distractions and they will cost you mentally a lot. And the images that are created in the social media, like this culture of influencers, which I really don't like, that you're an influencer, but influencing people towards doing what? Most of the times it's about selling things that you don't need. Creating that idea of a lifestyle. You know what? I can leave my job, my 10 to 4 job, it's so boring, and I can go to the Maldives, sit in an island, become a digital nomad, sit down there and earn a lot of money. That's not the reality for the most of the people. Even though you want to try it, it wouldn't work for everybody. Just like every profession doesn't work for everybody.
True.
Same is for travel blogging. Same is for the ideas they try to create. You know what? Enter this workshop, for example, about digital marketing, about this and that. You can earn money anywhere you're in the world, and you can be free to live your dreams. This is just another way to sell you their programs, and for majority of the people it doesn't work. They will show you only the reviews of a very few handfully chosen people for which it works. Most of the people, it doesn't work for them. So me as a social media content creator, my aim is to create content which creates value in the lives of the people. So this has to be, whenever you're on the social media, especially this is for the young adults and teens, whatever content you're creating, is it creating some value, or it's just like whatever it is? So that is something that we need to think about. And this idea of a perfect life or a perfect income, financial independence, there are absolutely no shortcuts for that. There are absolutely no shortcuts. If you want to become something independent financially, physically, whatever it is, you have to do the hard work. So unless you're ready to do it, there is no escape, unfortunately.
Well, I think Yaqeen gave you guys the hard and tough pill, which is you have to do the hard work, and there is no escape from that.
Absolutely.
Everybody has to struggle, and what matters is like, what are you struggling for? Some of us just like beat around the bush and keep doing absolutely nothing, and we reach nothing at the end of the day. Then you feel you're wasting your time. But if you focus and try to do your best to achieve something, then it will be absolutely worth it. Now, after this very heavy technological question, I want to go to a question that could be a little bit annoying to some people, but it needs to be asked, which is, why in so many societies, and could be the societies we both grew up in, that mental health is not as important as physical health? Why? I mean, we all know that if you're mentally not stable and you have very dark thoughts, you can actually kill yourself and just end your life like that. We all have one life at the end of the day. But we just care about if you twist your ankle, or I don't know, if you're fat or skinny enough or stuff like that, but we completely ignore the importance of the mental health.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard question, and it's like it's like a slap in the face of the society, which includes us as well. But here we are not, I believe we are not here to do the easy job. We are here to do the right job, to do the right thing. And in the pursuit of seeking the truth, we can risk offending people, because people can take offense in anything and everything. So as people who are learned, as people who have a cause, for example, mine is mental health or well-being or improving the lives of people, I will ask questions and I will address topics that are difficult, that we don't want to face, that we always try to brush under the carpet. We need to address the elephant in the room, in this case, which is the denial of the mental health concerns. Well, as a society, why do we do it? Well, why do we repress this concern of mental health? There could be a lot of reasons for these. One of them is our culture as well. Culturally, especially in the Muslim culture, mental health conditions are thought to be something which has to do with lack of faith. So anytime anybody says I'm depressed or I feel anxious, you will tell them to do these zikr or azkar, or you'll tell them that you don't pray on time, or you're far from Allah, or your relationship is not good with your God and you need to mend that, which is an essential part as well. I'm not trying to deny that, but using that as a pretext or using that as a context for denial for mental health is a huge problem. And I have seen this over the last 1 decade, working mainly with the Muslim societies and populations with regards to mental health. This is something very common, and that is something that needs to be addressed. And as a society, we don't want to acknowledge the reality. And because mental health is something which has not been discussed very well, and it is something which is an unknown realm for most of us. And the human natural reaction to what is unknown is fear. So whatever is unknown to us, the first reaction of the human beings towards that would be fear. And along with the fear comes denial, comes the shame, comes the stigma, because we don't want to address the issue. And denial, like I said, by saying it's a lack of faith. So first and foremost, what we need as a society, collectively, what we need to do is to acknowledge that there is a problem with regards to mental health field. And only when we acknowledge the problem, we will be able to resolve it. And in our societies, our concern is more about community psychology rather than an individualistic psychology where I'm a therapist, etc. It's better to approach this topic as a community. And why is that important? It is important because me as a therapist, I have weekly sessions with my clients from Europe or North America once a week for 50 minutes, which can extend to an hour. And people come every week, and each week they start getting better with their homeworks, with their journals, and with the therapy interventions that we do. I use CBT and existential therapy mostly, or dynamic therapy, depending on what the client's needs are. But when I have clients from Turkey, from Kashmir, from Pakistan, from India, the society is more collectivistic. And most of the times people seek therapy because of the problem within the family. So even after the session with me, they go back to the same environment, back to the same family. So we are kind of starting from zero again in every session. So it's very hard to maneuver therapy in collectivistic cultures. So that's why we need a family intervention or intervention at the community levels, because everybody needs to take responsibility and acknowledge that something is wrong. And mental health awareness is so low that conditions like even depression and anxiety are thought to be like craziness, even though it has nothing to do with brain, as such. It has more to do with the mood of the person. And we believe that we repress this mental health concern, thinking that it's going to go on its own. But trust me, it's not. Unless you address it, it's not going to go out on its own. And having said that, in the modern lifestyle, the modern society, we are much more susceptible and vulnerable towards mental health problems, unless we live a very healthy lifestyle and take all the precautions of self-care, etc. One of the byproducts of modern life, I always say, is depression and anxiety. So that's why the concerns, I can understand that family is very essential. That helps us in terms of coping, in terms of resilience, and religion is one more thing. but at the same time, mental health conditions, they are real, just as physical health conditions, and there is a relationship between mental health conditions and physical conditions. And mental conditions are also physical diseases. Depression is a disease. It's one of the most disabling disease. So we need to talk about it in that manner. And you know what? People ask me as a therapist, they say, you're a therapist. Do therapists ever have depression? Do they go through sadness?
That's a very good question.
Right? And if somebody is depressed, can they become a therapist? Can a therapist be somebody who has a history of depression or a history of addiction, etc.? People ask such questions. And my answer is always this. I said, is it something that therapists have to be immune to? Cardiologists can have heart attacks. Gastroenterologists can have stomach ulcers. Doctors can get flu. I mean, in the same way, doctors can get diabetes, for example. So in the same manner, therapists are not immune to mental health conditions, but therapists just know the way to deal with this as an emotion. So whatever it takes, therapists know the mechanisms. So it's not that therapists are immune to these conditions. So this is also a part of the awareness that we need to make people aware what is what, and what really therapy is, and why is it necessary to be in the therapy, and how it helps you in processing your emotions. And I think that is an interesting debate and an interesting a perspective that needs to be explored as to advance in the field of mental health.
Maybe for a society to advance in this particular field is to include curriculum in the schools for kids to talk about mental health in a very early stage.
Absolutely.
But which does not exist, sadly, in that part of the world.
Clearly, it doesn't. This discourse is absent in our part of the world. It's absolutely absent, this discourse. And right from school, I have always been an advocate of a curriculum which teaches well-being, because ultimately, if our studies and our degrees are not making us happy, and in fact they're making us more and more miserable,
and what's
the whole point of it?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the point of it? That even after so much study, so much investment, so much about learning, and then there is still no satisfaction, and then still there is no fulfillment in that. So what's the point of all that? So unless we started early from the school levels, teaching our children, we are always very proud of those success stories, how Elon Musk made it, how Jeff Bezos made it, how Bill Gates made it. Read failure stories. We are always taught about appreciating about success stories. Our curriculum does not teach us how to deal with failure. And that's a shame. More than learning about success.
That's the first failure.
True. There we go. That is the first failure of our education system. We need to teach our children how to deal with failure so that they don't fall in the traps of things about suicide, for example. One of the leading causes for suicide, and to be precise, 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds, a person loses their life to suicide. So many hundreds and thousands of people each year die by suicide, and we're so much worried about COVID-19 that we can talk about. But how many of us talk about suicide as a public safety, public health concern? And most of the people, it's a very huge problem about suicide, but it's also the most treatable one. Most of the people would never take their own lives if they had somebody to confide in, if they had somebody who could just have talked to them, believed in them, and told them, what, you can make it through. Failure is not a life statement. It's not the end of the story. It's not the end of the game. It's not the end of the rope. There is more to life. Maybe you're not able to see it. All you need to do is to believe. That is,
they need
those
that
are the words.
Yeah, or they need somebody to listen to them, at least listen to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. And when they don't find it, the result is people taking, youngsters, the second leading cause of death among 18 to 29-year-olds is actually suicide, globally speaking, and which is really sad. And again, it has definitely something to do with the mental health, because majority of the suicides happen because of depression. So that is something that that also needs to be addressed and talked about. We need to have this discourse. We need to talk about this in our schools, colleges, universities, in our families, in the popular culture. We need to talk about it, because 1 in 4 people, that is more than 1 billion people we're talking about here, suffer from a mental health condition in their life, during their lifetimes. That is 1 in every 4 people, and that's a huge number. It's around 25% of the population. So we are not talking about a small majority. We're talking about a huge number of people here. And what are we doing to improve the condition, or at least creating safe spaces where people can come and express their feelings, at least somebody to listen to them without judging, without the fear of judgment, without the fear of sharing their intimate secrets with others. So those are the kind of spaces we need to do, and these are the kinds of discussions and discourse that we need to have, I believe.
Yeah, I believe there's so much change that should be done, but it always starts with these small baby steps, as we always say. Maybe it's not as easy to include such a course in the curriculum for so many countries, but it's very easy to start the small conversations, which could lead to huge change in the future, hopefully. Now I wanna go to the next question, which somehow you touch on it during this question, which is, we cannot ignore the global pandemic that's happening right now. There's no way to like stay blind to what's happening around us, because it is out there and it's been there for a few months, and I think it will continue. Like now Spain is being hit with the first wave, now it's the second wave, and we don't know for how long this will continue. We've mentioned that this is a disease that maybe they don't have a cure for it right now, but they are working on it. And you see these big pharmaceutical companies, everybody is investing to find the cure. Now, with all that being talked about, what about the side effects of the pandemic on the mental health as a therapist?
Well, as you mentioned, it's a pandemic, COVID-19, which means that it's global and it has no cure, not yet. You see, it's interesting. When Ebola happened, which is much more deadly disease than COVID-19, people were not so concerned, because it was not us. It was Africa, mostly, which was hit by it. So people didn't care about it. The world didn't care. Even though there were scientists, there were people telling about outbreak of maybe another pandemic which would happen. The world didn't care, because people who were dying were the poor people in Africa who were dying. It was not a major it was not the world's concern. So, okay, if it's there and if it could be contained, it's not a big problem. Let's deal with it later on. But now this COVID-19, it doesn't discriminate. The virus doesn't. It affects the rich and the poor in the equal manner. So it is a matter of concern for everybody, no matter you're a celebrity, no matter you're a politician or you're a poor person. It affects everybody in an equal manner. So it has become a matter of concern for every single person. And as we discussed earlier, whatever is unknown, we don't know how the virus works. It has different mutations maybe. I'm not an expert on this, but being a student or taking a course in epidemiology, for example, which we have to do, I can have certain insights. And the same thing, like fear is the common response to what is unknown. And as I see in my own clients, and I have done several live sessions and programs and met other experts after the pandemic started hitting us. So people are more anxious, because they're scared to have this virus or getting sick, and travel restrictions are there. People are confined to their homes. Now we are waiting for the second wave, which is going to happen. So people are afraid. People are more anxious, because it's something that we have never seen before, and it doesn't discriminate. So the frustration because of not traveling, not seeing your family, or because of having an increased anxiety, it's definitely there. Also, there is loss of income. A lot of people, millions of the people, companies are laying off jobs, and people lost their jobs, loss of income. And while people are home, especially the partners who never used to spend so much time with each other, both are working, going out, etc., they just realized that each one was cheating on the other person. So there have been increases. Also, after spending time with each other, intimate partner violence has increased more than 50% in a lot of different counties, countries, and states. And there has also been less interaction with the people, because of which, especially the youngsters, the teenagers, and young adults have also become much more introverted, because most of the time was spent in the house, doing things like being on the internet rather than a physical activity, or emotionally connecting or reaching out to the other person. So that's why, because of all these factors, the pandemic has affected our mental health. And this pandemic, before it was a pandemic, and we were all scared, and now it has become more like a lifestyle, like always wearing the mask, always washing up our hands, which has also led to the anxiety. In general, I would say that people are more stressed, people are more anxious. I go to work like 5 to 6 days a week, and I could see it in myself as well, that I do feel more anxious than I used to be, that I might get sick, and then I might have a lot of concern. I might meet people and they might get sick because of me. So there are so many different concerns there. But what we can do is we can just filter our information. So one of the things that changes our emotions is how much news intake that we have. So for me, about COVID-19, for example, 5 to 10 minutes a day is more than enough. Don't concern yourself for every single notification about when the vaccine would be formed, how long do we have to suffer this. No, human beings have been through much worse problems, and we have survived the ice ages. We have done a lot of other things, and many other things human beings have been through, and we're still here. So COVID-19 is not going to wipe humanity from the face of the earth. And in majority of the cases, it's not lethal. There are many other diseases. There are many other conditions, like we talked about, public health concerns that need to be cared about. COVID is just one of them. So we need to tell ourselves that, fill ourselves with the right information, try to keep a routine, like whatever things we used to do all offline, try to do them online, most of them, or even work out and stuff. Like, for example, even when there was a lockdown, I used to get up and I used to have my clients online, and I dressed up like normal. I used to have a day like the normal, and keeping that sense of purpose, that sense of routine, and even working out in your home, that can actually have some effect on that. So I would say that yes, the pandemic has affected everybody's life in a negative manner, but it's not always going to be like this, like the doom and gloom. The prognosis looks good, and it looks like we are about to maybe develop a vaccine, and that's going to help everybody globally. So there is no reason to panic or to worry. Just take all the precautions and stay safe and stay healthy.
Absolutely. The reason I ask you this question, Yaqeen, because we as humans, we are always, as you said in your answer, we're exposed to the media and notifications, and somebody said like the vaccine coming out, or I don't know, this country is having an outbreak, and people are so fragile to receiving information, and they're always worried for no reason. And this is a conversation that I have with my friends all the time. I say, why are you telling me about this? Like they say, oh, this country is developing a vaccine. I said, are you working for the BBC? Why are you telling me this news? This is not going to help me. There is nothing I can do today or tomorrow
Correct.
To do with this. All I can do is like wear my mask or wash my hands and try to meet as less people as possible, and also try to stay really connected with the people I care about for my well-being. But again, I think still people are so in the middle of the storm of the pandemic. Yes. And the news and breaking news. Everything is breaking news. Everything is red lines and in capital letters, and everything is scary. And I've seen people with my eyes that go through huge dark thoughts lately just because of the pandemic, while I am maybe in the same area as them, and I'm just doing fine. And so what I say to them, it's a choice. I think at the end of the day, it's a choice how you deal with whatever news you receive. It's global, it's individual, it's a choice for you how to deal with it.
Correct. Absolutely.
All right, Yaqeen. So I believe we've covered so many things. I know your time is always very valuable. So I tried here to squeeze as much information as possible, because it's not easy always to have a chance to talk with a therapist over. You're the first therapist to talk with on this podcast.
It's a pleasure, Hassan.
Yeah, but I want to finalize our talk with not more just a question. Let's say it's like a free space for you to talk about mental health in general, and any advice for our generation, the young generation.
The advice to the young...
Sorry, since we've had, if I'm not mistaken, a few days ago or a week ago, we had the mental health awareness.
A week ago, yes.
Yeah. So this is a chance.
Great. So I did a couple of programs which are on my feed about the mental health day on the 10th of October that we were celebrating. Actually, the whole week preceding that is one of the days which is World Mental Health Federation. They started this since 1993, if I'm not mistaken. So the day has been dedicated to the mental health. And not only that day, we should take care of our mental health every other day as well. Because self-care is very important, not only for therapists. Self-care is important for every single person who is there, especially the first responders and especially those people who want to help others, which could be in these times of hard times of pandemic, which is every single one of us. We cannot serve from an empty vessel. So we need to fill ourselves with the resources, be it love, be it our family, be it our close friends, be it whatever it is that makes us alive. That is one part of it. Secondly, what I want to say to everybody out there, whosoever is listening, there is absolutely no shame in any mental health condition. There is no shame in it. It is how we are. It is a part of us that needs acceptance, and not just being in a place where we are tolerated, but we need to be in places where we are celebrated for who we are, and we need to look for such spaces. And that is really something which is important. And that's why if you have any mental health concerns, you should not be afraid to seek professional help from a psychiatrist or from a psychotherapist, for example. And the earlier you intervene, the better outcome, the better prognosis there would be. Because mental health is something which I want to emphasize, which gets ignored because we think time passes and it's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine with time if it's a mental health problem. And according to the literature and research, untreated depression, for example, can reduce a person's life by 30 years. And people say, how? Because of depression, it leads to other conditions, strokes, heart disease, diabetes, and many other conditions, because of cancers, because of which a person's life, if a person who had to live until 80 years would only live 50 in the worst case scenario because of untreated depression. Because mental health conditions can have physical effects. Let's not forget that. And that is something really essential. And how does therapy help? This is just to make you aware of how therapy helps. It helps us in processing our emotion. So if you have undergone trauma or pain, it's not that you're going to forget it, but you're going to put it in a place where it no longer harms you. And whenever you remember it, it doesn't affect you in a negative manner. So therapy is more about knowing yourself, processing your emotions, knowing your warning triggers, knowing what it is that, you're having those flashbacks or memories that hurt you, that harm you. Self-care, it's about acceptance. And it's about the fact that you have a safe space where you won't be judged and you don't have to suffer alone. You have somebody that can help you in this process, somebody who is professional who can help you. And that's why we shouldn't be wasting more years of our life, because life just comes once. And life is not only about surviving, it's about thriving. And if we want to thrive, we want to live a life with quality and dignity. And therapy can definitely help you with those concerns. So my advice would be, follow your heart, follow your dreams, accept yourself as you are. And if you ever need professional help, don't be afraid to seek it. There are many other people who are in the same or even the worse condition than you, and you will definitely find a place, a safe space where you can heal and where you can thrive. Thank you.
That's a very golden words. I'm super, super glad that Yaqeen Sikander, you accepted my invitation to be on the podcast. For whoever is listening or watching this very important episode of Hassan Talks podcast. This has been Yaqeen Sikander all the way from Turkey, from Istanbul. He's a psychotherapist, as we said. And he's been mentioning and emphasizing on the importance of mental health and importance of seeking professional help. Don't rely just on your friend or partner to be your therapist. You actually, if you feel a pain in the stomach, you go to the hospital. same thing goes for mental health as well. You don't just ask anybody around. So seeking professional help and taking things seriously in very early stages can hopefully prevent suicide and prevent being in very deep depression or a very long anxiety. So we come to the end of this episode. Again, Yaqeen, I want to thank you, and I hope you stay safe and you stay healthy as always.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really great sharing some of the thoughts and concerns about mental health with you and your audience.
The pleasure is mine and ours, and thank you for everybody who's listening to this episode. As we always say, stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive, and not positive with COVID. Stay positive in your thoughts and your ideas. With COVID, you try to stay negative. That would be better. And that's it. We have reached the end of this Hassan Talks podcast. This episode, the podcast will continue. Feel free to reach out if you have any feedback about this episode. Feel free to contact Yaqeen. I will leave the information of his social media contacts on the bio of this episode. And that's it, guys. Peace out.